And I believe we are happening. We are live. If you call this living. Good to see you all. Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time of the day it may be for you. For me, it is 1 minute after 1 a.m. here in Northern California, as we call it. In actual fact, the part of California I live in, which is the San Francisco Bay Area, is kind of halfway up the state, really. But the prejudice is that there's a big chunk of population down in Southern California and a big chunk of population around the Bay Area, right in the middle of the state, and then no really large population centers the rest of the way up. So they tend to call everything from here on up Northern California, even though technically we're kind of right in the middle. I'm only saying this for the benefit of those of you who are not familiar with California geography, as may be the case with some of my European and other non American friends, and even some of my American friends. It's a big country, and not everybody is always familiar with all the different parts of it. I know if somebody made references to me about certain parts of the Narragansett River or something, I wouldn't recognize what they were talking about either. Anyway, for those of you who may not know me, I don't know what the hell you'd be doing here watching this, since you'd only find out about it from my page unless you stumbled on it. But I'm Tad. I'm going to be reading, I'm starting a new book tonight, a shortish book compared to some of my others, but a book nonetheless, with one story that runs through the entire thing, called Brothers of the Wind. I will explain a little bit about it before I start, so don't worry about that. But I'm going to vamp for a few moments on sort of filling people in on what's been going on. What's going on is I'm in the final stages with Navigator's Children. Now we're having issues about the publication date. I won't even talk about that. I find it so frustrating. I want to A, scream, B, cry, C, all of the above. But I'll let you know when things are more clear as to what's going on. Meanwhile, I'm just working my way through the last stretches of the manuscript, which fortunately don't need much work because they were among the parts that, because I did them last, they have the least amount of reworking to be done. So there aren't whole huge chunks being taken out and replaced and things like that. Although I have added a chunk. Because my first readers all kind of uniformly gave me a feedback on a particular thing, a particular plot line, and said, we need a better resolution. So I have endeavored to do that. I won't tell you what because I don't want to give anything away. Obviously, it's one of the few things I have going for me, is being able to hold the information back so that people actually need to buy the book, especially since I'm putting all huge chunks of my other books out here for anybody to listen to who wants to. Let me see what else is going on. So, the same normal stuff. We've had a tough night tonight with because we didn't realize it, but somebody over at the nearby Stanford University, not somebody, but the college itself, after there was, I think, a sporting event of some kind, a soccer match or something, they did fireworks after the show tonight. And we were used to, in the couple of weeks leading up to the 4th of July, for people occasionally setting off a firework or something, which, like many dogs, but Johnny particularly hates, and it scares him and it upsets him. But tonight, of course, it was an entire fireworks show, and just, as close as it could possibly be to us, because Stanford is right next to Palo Alto. And being a whole fireworks show, it went on for about 20-25 minutes, and they're so sad. They're like just spots of drool up and down, because when dogs get nervous, that's one of the things they do, is they open their mouths and pant, and Johnny, being Johnny, he drips everywhere he goes. Poor thing. So we've got him in his thunder coat, and I'm doing everything I can do, and he's better now because it's been over for a couple of hours, but he had a rough time, poor thing. Anyway, what else has been going on? We lost a family friend who's very dear to me. I won't go into details because it's not it's not my personal loss to talk about, and you people wouldn't know the person anyway. But somebody who meant a lot to me growing up. So that's been tough. It's been a tough year that way. A tough last few years. Part of it, of course, is just the age and life that I have reached, but it also is just been a tough time in a number of ways for a number of people. A number of health issues, a number of problems all over the place. So, but, as I have said before, this is the price. Mortality is the price that we pay for life, is that it comes to an end. And as mine will, as yours will. Yes, sorry if I gave the Santa Claus thing away there. But yeah, as far as we know, we all die, at least in our mortal bodies. Beyond that, who knows? I'm certainly not going to take up sides on that right now. But that is the way. And I and we, have all had some rough lessons on that lately. A lot of pain. But as I also said, it's how it goes. We all have a beginning and we all have an end, and it's what we do in between those two things that matters. And both the person that we lost this week and my mom, who we lost earlier this year, filled those lives with a lot of really good stuff. And that's really all you can hope for. When the final time comes, or the final day or hour or whatever comes, is that you can look back and say, I think I made the world a little bit better than it would have been if I hadn't been around. And I think that's really all we can shoot for. Anything beyond that, that's up to you. You can tell me what you think, if you think that there's something beyond that. But the only thing I know for certain is that we have this life and we can do the best we can with it. And that is something to shoot for in every life, is to make the best out of what you have and on what you can provide to those around you in terms of love and support, and occasionally a sense of humor, which helps. It helps in a lot of situations. Anyway, what else? So, scared, nervous dog. We went around to one of our neighbors this couple of days ago and checked in with a lot of people. As some of you know, we're living in my parents' old house, hence the different background if you have just come back to me after not having checked in for a while. We're living in my parents' house, the house I grew up in. And so we saw a lot of neighbors on Friday who, all remember my parents very well. And of course, my dad was living here until, end of December. So it's not like he's been gone a real long time. But that was nice. That was sweet, getting to see some of the folks. And there's still a couple of neighbors here since my family moved in. So, it was a pleasure to check in with them. And, they're my parents' age. So, these are people who have now lived very full lives themselves. So it's a pleasure to see them up and around. And my dad's doing okay. I just talked to him today and passed on some information to him, and I think I caught him right after lunch where he was feeling like, I want to go take a nap, because he was not exactly voluminous and forthcoming. It was almost more like, why are you calling me again? Did you have something useful to tell me, Tad? I was like, well, no, just checking in. So basically that's where I'm at. No big news. I can't think of any anyway. Let me just see what I've got here. Who has showed up and left a mark, as it were. Olaf was the first. I saw that Olaf waved starting out. Who else have I got here? Maria Jose. Hello. Good to see you. Suzanne. Pleasure. Timothy. Good to see you. Mahmoud, as always. Great to have you. Tony Graham. Hello, Tony. Nice to have you with us. Dirk. Hello. Kristen, as always. Lisa, my sister-in-law. Hi, sweetie. Good to see you. I hope things are good at home. Rosalba. A pleasure, as always. Becky. And there's my mother-in-law, Hazel. Hello, Hazel. You will recognize the last name, which, of course, is the same as my wonderful, winsome, witchy wife, Deborah. And Ilva. Hello, darling. And who else is here? Olaf, who I already said hello to. Debbie. Good to have you, Debbie. Nicole. Hello, Nicole. Good to have you too. Penny, a pleasure. Sandy K. Summer. Ooh, I don't know if I've seen that name before, or if I have, I've forgotten. If that's the case, I apologize, Sandy. Nikki. Hello, Nikki. Nikki, are you any relation to, I see your last name, Chetwin, horror and fantasy stories? Anyway, just curious. Mark. Good to see you. Mark checking in usually from Yorkshire. And it says, and one more, but I can't tell who that was. Oh, Sherry. Sherry pops in. Hello, Sherry. Good to see you. So that's where I is at this point. Those are the people that I see who are here. And beyond that, we're not sure. I'm assuming you guys can all see me. Once again, this thing says the live video has ended. I don't know why that would be. Let me look at the other site. It doesn't tell me. As far as I know, I don't know why this is saying I'm not on. This is one of the most frustrating things. Oh, Sandra. Sandra from Vienna. Oh, okay. All right. Good. Good to see you. Okay, so obviously I am still on, and this thing is lying to me when it says that I have gone offline. I have no idea why that would be, but it says this live video has ended. It'll be available on your timeline shortly. I will just go ahead and continue reading. And if anybody out there wants to tell me that something has happened, I will be. It has paused twice for me, but continued a moment later. Yeah, it seems like anytime there's a lag in the stream that it says the video is over, which is strikes me as a bit of a flaw in the mechanism, especially with streaming technology being as hit and miss as it sometimes is. But, who am I? What do I know? I'm just a dude from California. Okay, so let's lift that up just a little bit. And I am going to start. So, what I am reading from is The Brothers of the Wind. And for those of you, I know most of you probably know the whole ins and outs of it. So, I'll make it a quick summary of how we got to this. During the time when COVID was happening, and I had already, or actually just before COVID had started, for a bunch of reasons, there was stuff going on with my publishers. My publishers were changing their business setup, and were having trouble doing the normal kinds of contracts and things like that. And as a result, I thought, well, I'd like to do a couple of short novels linked to the ongoing Last King of Ostenard project. So without going through all the machinations, I did. And one of them came out first. That was, of course, The Heart of What Was Lost, which was all originally called The Heart of All Regret, or The Heart of Regret, or something like that. Anyway, but The Heart of What Was Lost, that is the essentially the bridge book between the end of To Green Angel Tower in the first set of books and Before Witchwood Crown in the new set of books. And it introduced a few characters. It brought back a few characters from the old books, the old series, and it introduced a few of the new characters who would show up later on in the new ones, in the Witchwood Crown, etc. So, but originally I was going to wait and do the last book, Brothers of the Wind, after I finished the final volume, the one I'm working on now, Navigator's Children, I'm finishing now. But because of COVID and various other things and my publishers changing things around and a lot of other things going on, I wound up saying, I could actually squeeze it in now since I'm kind of held up on some other stuff. And when I realized I could do that, I also realized that I could tie it in more firmly. So those of you who have not read Brothers of the Wind, if there are some of you out there, there are things that happen in this book that actually have significance, even though it takes place hundreds and hundreds of years before any of the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn or Last King books. There are things that take place in this short novel, Brothers of the Wind, that have a lot of things actually that have bearing. And I was able, because I wasn't going to have to wait till the ending, I was able to change a few things around. So this actually is a book that has ripples and repercussions into Navigator's Children. And that's part of what's made Navigator's Children complicated, is having to juggle things around and make everything make sense. So I hope that explains everything. Um, and that's really all you need to know. If you don't know all of those books and you're just tuning in for whatever reasons, you don't need to know anything to start this book. It all becomes made fairly clear as it goes. Okay? Okay. But it takes place, like I said, about 1,900 years before the Dragon Bone Chair. So there you go. Oh, although, one last thing, just in case it's, again, I'm assuming there are a few people out there who may not know this stuff. I know most of the dedicated readers already know all these things. But for those who don't know, the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn books and to a large extent the new books as well, are largely located in and around or have connection to the Hayhold, the big mortal castle where Simon and Miriamel are, both came from, etc., the main characters. Before it was a mortal castle, it belonged to the Scythi, the immortals, and it was called Azua. And that's where a large amount of this book, especially the beginning, takes place. So now you know. And knowing is at least half the battle. Okay, so Brothers of the Wind, Part 1. The Black Worm. I now undertake to tell my master Hakatri's story, or at least the part of it that I myself witnessed. But even before I have begun, I am already full of doubts. I cannot tell my master's tale without telling some of my own, but I am not the same person who journeyed so long at his side. The things that happened to us changed me almost as much as they did him, and I can scarcely remember now the person I was then. Still, this Pamon Kes will do his best to tell of what that Pamon Kes saw, heard, and felt during that fateful time. I have no idea who will read these words, but I feel I must set them down. The years are passing. Death will eventually close my eyes, and still my tongue. The knowledge of such important events does not belong to me alone, but to all the heirs of the lost garden. Still, it is a painful thing to tell unhappy truths, even from behind the shield of honesty. Many will scorn my words because of what I am, Tenuka Daya, though we are often called changelings and thought by many to be a lesser kind of creature than our Zedaya masters. But I beg those who might be angered by my tale to understand loyalty to the house of year dancing and the people of Azua. The only way left for me to demonstrate that loyalty and to celebrate my master is to set things out just as I remember them, without care for the unhappiness that some might feel at seeing them revealed. Duty is honor, my stern father often used to tell me, and honor is all. But I would amend his saying. I have learned that our first duty is to truth, because without truth, honor itself is hollow. It was in the last days of the serpent moon, early in the season of renewal, just as the weather began to turn. Everything seemed ordinary for that time of year. The sky was cold but bright above the city, as it had been for several days, and many birds sang. After I had arisen and offered a prayer to the lost garden, I went to the great palace stables to oversee the care of my master's horses and watch the morning feeding to see who was fit and who was nursing some woe or wound. It seemed like any other day. All around me, Tenukadaya of lesser rank and status than mine, mostly grooms and stable hands, hard at work even after the horses had finished eating, busy currying the beasts' fine coats, walking them out to exercise on the white sand. Sorry, oh, that just flipped. All around me, Tenukadaya of lesser rank and status than mine, mostly grooms and stable hands, were hard at work, even after the horses had finished eating, busy currying the beasts' fine coats, walking them out to exercise on the white sand of the great courtyard, and ministering to them in 100 other small ways. The stables of Azua are filled with old, proud bloodlines, and those who tend them are proud too. Yohe, armiger to my master's brother Inaluki, what the mortals of the south would call a squire, was the only Zediah in the stables when I arrived. Yohe was lean even for her slender race, strong-fingered and practical, wearing her hair always close braided so it would not interfere with her work. She was singing quietly as she introduced a 9-season foal to the moth bridle. Our eyes met, but she gave me only a curt nod of greeting. I was an armiger, just as Yohe was, but none of the Zediah squires ever wasted much time being courteous to me, though Yohe at least would acknowledge my presence. She also had an excuse for her less than friendly greeting. The first time introducing a young horse to the moth bridle is a delicate moment. Our mounts do not like having anything on their faces, even a restraint as light as a moth bridle. I have never understood how mortals can put a bit in their horses' mouths. Our Azua steeds would never put up with it. I watched for a moment as Yohe raised and lifted the wings of the moth with each gentle pull on the reins. The foal shuffled a little, but Yohe had a light touch, and the foal remained calm, lulled by her ancient song. I returned to inspecting my master's horses. As I was removing a stone from pale Seafoam's hoof, and wondering whether to have the bronzesmith make her a new shoe, a young Tanukadaya stable hand came running in from the courtyard. It was Nali Yun, his face flushed with excitement. "Master Pamon, there are mortal men in the palace," he announced loudly. Yohe turned on him. "Are you witless?" she hissed at him, trying to soothe the startled foal. "Roaring like some animal. Have a care, changeling." I pulled Nali Yun aside. "When are there not mortal men in the palace?" I asked him quietly. "They line up at the gates before dawn every day with things to trade or sell. They lurk around the visitors' court, creaking like crows at everyone who passes by, hoping for an audience with the Saansara and the Protector, an audience they will never get. We can scarcely take a step out of the inner palace without stumbling over some mortal or other. Why do you shout about such ordinary things?" "You are as stiff as a stick, Pamankes," he complained. "My news is nothing ordinary." "Neither is shouting in the stables." But I disliked chiding another Tanukadaya in front of Yohe. She and the other Zediah squires already thought little of our kind. "So tell me, why is the arrival of more mortals anything unusual?" "Because it is a whole company of mortal men from the west. They have come seeking an audience, and Lady Amarasu has granted it to them. It will begin when the morning bell rings. You must go swiftly." "Do not make me ask for quiet again," Yohe warned him sternly. I did my best to keep my temper with the young groom. Why should I rush? To see a few mortal men? That is nothing new. "Well, you might still want to hurry," he said with a grin, "because your master, Lord Hakatri, wants you to come to him in Thousand Leaves Hall." "You fool!" I was truly irritated now. "You should have told me that at first." I immediately cleaned myself as best I could and hurried to the great hall, but the groom's nonsense had delayed me. By the time I reached the antechamber of the great hall, the other folk of the court had already begun filing in. The largest number of them were golden-skinned Zediah, like my master, but I could see a few bone-pale Hikidaya, the Zediah's sister clan, among them. We Tanukadaya also have golden skin, but it has a less robust hue than that of our Zediah masters, like wine that has been watered. The Hikedaya were now scarce in Ozawa. Most of them had followed their self-styled queen, Utuku, north to her mountain city of Nakiga, which only made those remaining with their eyes like black onyx and their skins pale as scraped parchment stand out from the rest of the crowd. The Hikedaya who stayed had chosen their lives in Ozawa among the Zidaya over blood ties, and though their northern relatives might despise that choice or even think them traitors, the Hikedaya of Ozawa still mingled freely with my master's folk, as if the great separation of those two clans had never happened. As I entered, the day's first light shone from the high windows of Thousand Leaves Hall, splashing down on the myriad hues worn by the Zidaya, both in their clothing and in the fanciful shades of their hair. Far above our heads, the light also struck brilliant gleams from the wings of the countless butterflies clinging to the sides and slender roof beams of the sacred dome known as the Yazira, as they slowly stirred into morning life. On the dais, beneath the open-air dome, sat the leading members of the House of Year Dancing. Most of them, that is. Pride of place, of course, belonged to Saonsura Amaterasu, and Protector Iunigato, my master Hakatri's parents. My master's wife, Briseyu, was there too, holding their little daughter Likimea, who did not seem to want to be held. Even my master's younger brother, Inaluki, had arrived and joined his family. The only member of the year dancing root and bough not on the dais was my master himself. As I craned my neck to look around the great hall, Hakatri was usually the soul of promptness, I finally noticed the half-dozen figures kneeling at the foot of the dais, gazing up at the masters of the year-dancing clan like prisoners of war hoping for mercy. These mortals were tangle-haired and bearded, as was common among the males of that folk, dressed in rough garb made from wool and animal hides. In truth, between their unkempt hair and thick furs, I thought they looked little more than animals themselves. The one I guessed to be their leader seemed young, but he was as shaggy and unshaven as the rest, and his eyes seemed small and secretive compared to those of my master's folk, or to those of my own people, for that matter. His hair and whiskers were a fiery shade of red I had seldom seen on a mortal before, so bright it might have been dyed. I also thought I saw something open and inquisitive about his face, an unmistakable intelligence that belied his savage appearance. Amaterasu Shipborn was also observing the newcomers, her expression calm and benign, like someone at prayer. The Saonsura wore her usual modest robes, gray as rain clouds or the velvety breast of a dove, but they did not make her invisible, far from it. Even her husband, great Iunigato, chief protector of all the Zidaya clans, seemed to recede into the shadows beside her. Amarasu's wise, gentle face drew the eye, like a candle flame in a dark room. Then she raised her hand, and those gathered in the hall fell silent. "We give you welcome, men of the West." Her voice did not seem much more than conversational, but it carried across the great hall. "You are guests in our house, and need fear no harm." She then turned to the mortal's young leader. "Tell us your name and your errand." The chief of the delegation bowed his head. "Thank you, Majesty. We are grateful that you and your husband have agreed to hear us. It is a great honor to come before the king and queen of the Zidaya." Those who knew her might have recognized a flicker of discomfort. "Those are mortal titles, young man, not ours. My husband is the protector of Year Dancing House, and I am the caretaker of its rituals. Our rulings have only as much power as the respect they earn." Oops, hang on a second. I just lost one there. The mortal bowed again.
Forgive our ignorance, my lady. It has been long since any of my folk were here in Great Azua, and we are unfamiliar with your customs. Only our terrible need brings us to trouble you today. You still have not told us your name or your home, she prompted him. What do they want? Asked her husband, who often seemed to be thinking of other matters. Even Forgive me, lord and lady. The mortal blushed, a strange sight to my eyes, as if someone had built a fire inside him that glowed through the skin of his cheeks, and his long grandson of King Gorlach, of the line of Herne the Great. Our kingdom is in the place you call Mian Azushai, at the edge of the western mountains. As you know well, my lords and ladies, since that country was given to Herne's folk as our freehold by your own people. I knew this ancient story only vaguely, but Amaterasu nodded in agreement. Yes, the gift of those lands to Herne the Hunter was confirmed by my mother and father, she said, but that does not tell us what brings you to our court today. Do not hesitate to tell us your business, mortal men, said Inaluki, smiling broadly. Perhaps you have found the weather unpleasant on Azosha's hill and wish to give that country back to the Zediah. My master's brother was fond of jests, although he could also be quick to take offense when he was the target of someone else's wit. Or have your sheep wandered away from you and into our lands? The mortal named Cormac appeared uncertain whether he was being mocked, and turned hurriedly back to Amaterasu. Neither of those things is true. We rode here to kneel at your feet, Lord and Lady of Azua, because our present situation is dire. We came for no other purpose. Do not be troubled, Amaterasu said. My younger son is pleased to make a sort of jest. She gave Inaluki a look that, though it contained affection, also showed she did not approve of teasing guests, mortal or otherwise. Tell us truly what brings you to us, Prince Cormac. I promise that you will be heard with courtesy from here on. Like the others watching this unusual audience, all my attention was fixed on the gathering at the dais. When someone clutched my elbow, it was all I could do not to cry out in surprise. Hang on a second. There's a nervous dog scratching at the door. I'm just going to let him in. Okay, John, you can come in. All right, let me read that last section. Like the others watching this unusual audience, all my attention was fixed on the gathering at the dais. When someone clutched my elbow, it was all I could do not to cry out in surprise. I have been looking for you, Pamon, whispered my master, Hakatri, who had appeared beside me as noiselessly as a shadow. Where have you been? Here, as Nali Yun told me that you requested. Lord Hakatri shook his head in annoyance, then smiled. I told that young rascal I would meet you outside the hall. I waited there no little time. I am very sorry, my lord. If you wish, I will help you catch him and beat him. He is as feckless as a cricket, that one. Ah, said a Unigato from his seat atop the dais. I see the last of our family has arrived. Hakatri, come and join us. We will talk later, Pamon, my master whispered, then wove his way through the gathered crowd to join the rest of his family. The mortal men watched him respectfully as he passed, which was no surprise. My master was known to many of them, at least by reputation. In person he made an impressive figure, tall and graceful, more his mother's child than his father's. Inaluki, by contrast, looked much like his sire, Unigato, with an expressive face and wide eyes that could seem innocent or mischievous. With Inaluki, though, neither expression could be completely trusted. I am glad you could join us, my son, Amaterasu said as my master took a seat near her. The heralds tell us that the question these envoys bring is no small matter." "My apologies," Hakatri said. "There was a confusion of messages." "We are all here now, but why?" asked his father. "We still do not know what these mortals want of us." "We crave your help, my lord," answered the mortal prince. "We come on behalf of our people, Hern's people, to whom you gave the lands that once belonged to Lady Azosha. And I fear we are the bearers of foul news." He hesitated, as if he did not want to speak the next words. "One of the great worms has come down again from the north." At his words, many of those gathered in the hall looked at each other, disquieted. "A great worm?" said a Unigato. "Are you certain?" "More likely it is some trifling spawn of the elder dragons," said Inaluki with a dismissive gesture, meaning small matters made too large. "Some slithering hatchling that has frightened mortals who have never seen anything like it before." "I beg your pardon, my lord," said Cormac, "but though we are indeed short-lived compared to your folk, we herdsmen are old in lore, much of which comes from the teachings of your own people. This is no mere hatchling. This is one of the great worms, one of the old blood. In truth, I have seen it with my own eyes. It is a cold drake, black as a beetle's shell, and if it is a hand's breadth less than 24 paces from nose to tail tip, I will give away my sword and shield and become a priest. We say it is the beast you call Hidohebi, the black worm." A whisper of surprise, yes, and apprehension too, swept through the great hall at the description of such a large worm. The long conflict called the War with the Dragons had ended many great years before, though the struggle against the worm spawn still continues. None of the oldest, most terrible of the beasts had been seen south of the snowfields since Aisoga the Tall and 100 warriors from Azua and Anvijanya had destroyed the mighty white drake of the northern waste back in Senditu's day. "That is unlikely," Inaluki declared. "That foul creature has not been seen in 100 of your mortal years, or more, and even then it never roamed south of the snowfields. No, I doubt very much that Hidohebi still lives." "I have seen the monster that we call Droknather in our tongue," said Cormac, frowning, "and I cannot doubt it is Hidohebi of legend in all particulars. Any other thought is even more fearful. May the gods forbid there should be more than one of such a beast." He shook his head. "Several moons ago the dragon arrived and made its lair in a gorge along the Silver Way at the eastern edge of our lands. Our people now call the place Serpent's Vale. The worm has emptied the nearby hills of life and ventures farther every day in search of prey. Our grazing animals, our precious cows and sheep are vanishing, even from high meadows leagues away from that cursed valley. All our people have fled the lands around it, and they fear even to walk or ride on the Silver Way. The coming of this beast has cut our small kingdom in half. I fear that if nothing is done to kill or drive away the creature, it will destroy my people." "But why do you bring the news to us here in Azua, so far away?" asked a Unigato, frowning a little. "What of Lord Enizashi and his Silverhome clan? Mezutwa is only 2 days' journey from where you say this creature has its lair. Enizashi is a great lord with thousands of his own folk. What of them?" Cormac shook his head again. "Lord Enizashi will not see us. He and his kin have no love for mortals, especially my folk. He and his people are safe inside the mountain walls of the Silverhome, and that is all he cares about." Iunigato already seemed weary of the matter. My master's reticent father has never much enjoyed the demands of governance, preferring to spend his days in contemplative retreat. "But what is all this to us?" he asked. "You still have not told us why you have come to Azua." "I think he has," said Amaterasu, but her words seemed to go unheard. "Is it not plain to see, great protector," pleaded Cormac, "the lords of Azua, your sires, gifted us with those lands. Now we beg your help to defend them, because this threat is beyond us. Who among our mortal kind has ever killed or even survived a fight with one of the great worms?" "We still have only the word of mortals that this is such a beast," said Inaluki with a careless flick of his fingers. "Mortals who confess they know little of dragons, great worms, or otherwise." The mortal prince turned to him. For a moment this Cormac seemed near to losing temper, but when he spoke his voice was even. "A man does not need to be stabbed, Lord Inaluki, to know that a knife is sharp. The thing is without point. Hakatri, my son, you have been silent through all this talk. What do you think?" I guessed that my master had been silent because the conversation troubled him. He stood and said, "I think it is a question that requires thought, my lord. My grandparents did support the mortal's claim to Lady Azosha's old lands. None here can dispute that. More importantly, if this beast is truly Hidohebi, or any of the great worms, then it is a risk to all people, not merely mortals. But it troubles me that Lord Enizashi wants nothing to do with the matter." "Enizashi is like one of those crabs who takes up a shell that others have discarded," said Inaluki. "If he is protected, he cares for no one else's safety." Amaterasu gently reproved him. "The Lord of Silverhome has proved his bravery many times over, my son. He has slain giants by his own hand, with no weapon but a spear. The courage of Inazashi and his folk is not in question here. What remains to be decided is what responsibility Year-Dancing House bears to Hearn's mortal descendants in the lands my mother and father ceded to them." "If you say so, lady." Inaluki stood and bowed toward her. "But to me this argument over responsibility seems foolish. We are told a worm has come to the West March and hides in the sea-swell hills." He spread his arms as if accepting an honor. "I will ride back with these mortals and dispatch the creature with my own hand. That seems a suitable task for a scion of the House of Year-Dancing." He turned to Prince Cormac. "We will set out tomorrow, mortal men. I have a spear of my own, and though it has not yet brought me glory," he looked briefly to his mother as if her defense of Enizashi had annoyed him, "it seems a good time to test its mettle, and my own." "Sit down, Inaluki." His father, the protector, did not hide his frustration. "This is no time for heroic boasting." "It is not a boast if it is fulfilled." Inaluki had been caught up by one of his strange moods. His smile seemed little more than a show of teeth. "Do you not trust me, father? Do you not think me capable of such a feat?" "The very word you choose proves that you do not understand the matter." The Unigato had finally been roused to full attention. "Slaying a great worm is not like hunting a boar or even a giant. Now seat yourself while I confer with your mother." My master's younger brother sank back onto his chair, but it was plain to see that Iunigato's words had not cooled Inaluki's indignation, but rather stoked it. His handsome face was tight, jaw clenched, and bright golden eyes narrowed. He looked, I could not help thinking, as if a handful of tinder might burst into flame if it touched him. Beside him, my master appeared untroubled, but Hakatri was always better at hiding his feelings than his younger brother. "Let those gathered here now disperse," the Unigato announced. "Take these mortals to the visitors' court and make them comfortable there. The Sansara and I will take this up again tomorrow and render a decision then." After the audience ended, I found Hakatri talking with Tariki Clearsight, a friend of his own generation who was closer to my master than any, except for his brother Inaluki. "As you know, Pamon, we leave on a hunt of our own tomorrow," Hakatri said as I joined them. "A family of giants have descended into the Limberlight and are haunting the forest on the far side of Shiki's Wood. Are my horses ready?" "Yes, my lord. Seafoam was a little lame yesterday, but I think it was only a rock in her hoof. Still, I think you should ride Frostmane instead." "I wish my armiger was as conscientious as yours," said Tariki with a laugh, and I confess to feeling pride at hearing that. "Perhaps I should have a Tanukadaya of my own." Hakatri clapped a hand on my shoulder. "There is only one Pamon Kes," he said, "and he is mine, first of his race to be granted an armiger's banner." As I basked in this praise, my master's small, fierce child, Likimea, ran toward us, swinging, caught her up and pressed his face against her cheek, even as she struggled cheerfully to escape so she could chase birds again. Jeez Louise. Let's go back over that. I don't know why that went on. Because it's on airplane mode. As I basked in this praise, my master's small, fierce child, Likimea, ran toward us, swinging a stick like a sword as she chased a bird. My master caught her up and pressed his face against her cheek, even as she struggled cheerfully to escape so she could chase birds again. His wife, Briseyu of the silver braids, arrived and took the prisoner from him. Then she and Hakatri touched fingertips. Outside of Azua, Briseyu is famed mostly for her great beauty, but she is in all ways a good match for her husband, both in her wisdom and her even-handed manner. "Perhaps you should put off your hunt, husband," she said, "at least for a few days until this embassy from the mortals is answered. Your brother seems much upset, and I will confess I fear the rumors of this worm myself." My master's friend Tariki excused himself to leave them to their private talk. I could not leave so easily without my lord's permission, and I failed to catch his attention. "Beloved," he told Briseyu, "if I had to put off my duties every time Inaluki conceived some strange fancy, I would never accomplish anything. We both know my brother will fret and seethe for a while at being corrected by my parents, but he will cool soon enough. He always does." Briseyu shook her head, not quite in disagreement, I thought, but disquiet. "I hope you are right, but that is not why I ask you to wait. I do not have your mother's gift of foresight, but Inaluki's talk about the worm gave me a pang, such as I have not felt before." She allowed little Likimea to climb down from her arms. The child crouched at her father's feet and began playing with the cords of his boots. "A pang?" he asked. "A moment of fear, but as real as anything that happened today. I almost dropped our child, it froze my blood so." "And what do you fear?" "I do not know precisely, husband. I am no prophet. But I fear for your brother, and I fear this worm." Hakatri tried to smile. "You fear for Inaluki. That is a change. Usually your forebodings are for me." She shook her head. "Do you not understand how strong this pang was? And how could anything that happened to your brother not touch you too, and me, and our child?" I felt like an eavesdropper. but there was nothing I could do about it. I watched as my master took her hand in his. "Do you think I would let something happen to him, beloved? And do you think I would stand by and let something happen to you or our daughter?" "Not by choice." "Then quiet your fears, if you can, and have a little trust in your husband and in my parents. They will make no rash decisions. And a worm is only a worm, no matter how fearsome. Our people have fought many." She shook her head yet again, and this time it seemed to speak of resignation. "I do not fear the dragon itself. I fear what may come of it." "You have lost me," he said, looking around the room. "You will have to explain this riddle of your fear more clearly, but speaking of lost, where is our daughter now?" Briseyu looked up. "There she is, at the top of the stairs." She let out a sigh. "If I do not fetch her back, she will be down splashing in the pool of 3 depths in moments. But we should speak more of this. Of course." He watched her leave in pursuit of their daughter, her movements graceful as wind-blown mist. "I think my beloved has forgotten that we journey only as far as the Limberlight," he said to me a moment later, but his gaze never left Briseyu's retreating form. "We will be home within 2 or 3 days at the latest." "Then we still ride out tomorrow?" I asked. He nodded. "Even if there is a new and dangerous worm in the Westfold, we still must teach the giants not to wander into our lands. Meet me at the stables in the hour before dawn, as we planned. See that all is ready. We will need our boar spears." "And your brother, my lord?" I asked. "Will he accompany you and the others on your giant hunt?" Hakatri looked across the room. His younger brother was showing no obvious signs of dismay at having been chided by his father. He had gathered a group of his friends and was amusing them with playful demonstrations of his dragon-fighting prowess. But I thought Inaluki's eyes seemed overbright, his laughter forced. My master shook his head. "Seeing how much of that spiced black wine he has already downed, and with the sun still a long march from noon, I rather doubt it. But my brother is headstrong, and always changeable, as you know. It would not go amiss to suggest Joe should have bronze ready for him to ride, just in case." I bowed then and left. I had much to do if my lord was to go giant hunting with the rising sun. It is hard to speak of my master Hakatri without also speaking of his younger brother Inaluki. In many ways they seemed like 2 halves of a single thing. They were nearly inseparable during their youth, and understood each other's thoughts so well that sometimes I saw an entire conversation take place between them in a single exchanged glance. As youths, they would race their horses side by side out of Azua's gates, laughing as their steeds matched each other's pace, the riders' pale hair unbound and their cloaks billowing behind them. Seeing them, the people of Year Dancing House would call out, "There go the brothers of the wind!" And indeed, at such moments they did seem like creatures far beyond the rest of us, even to their own kin. But as close as they were also very different. Lord Inaluki, the younger, was as changeable as the wind. His angers were sometimes so immediate and powerful that they seemed to threaten all those around him. Inaluki was a creature of sudden fancies and strong passions, lively as a flame, and his shifting moods could set everything around him ablaze, either for good or ill. My master's humors, though, were like the embers of some sacred eternal fire, their glow often hidden but never extinguished. Hakatri was broader in his face and limbs than his brother, and though many admired my master of the 2, but it is Hakatri's eyes I always think of first, especially the touch of earthy brown in the gold that deepened their color and gave weight to even his briefest glances. I must also speak of his kindness. He was always generous to me, beyond his obligations, but his greatest gift was that of his time and his attention, though few of his folk thought my people to be worth such generosity. He always treated me well and never broke a promise. Most of all, he taught me the meaning of honor. In truth, it sometimes seemed to me that my master's entire family was haunted by their sense of honor. A strange word to use, but apt. My master, Hakatri, wore his honor like a heavy crown, but without complaints. His father, Unigato, leaned upon his like a staff, and it was hard to tell sometimes which one was supporting the other. Inaluki could be almost mad with it at times, ready to ride at once to prove true to its charge, but then the wind would change, and he would scoff at it and make outrageous jests, as if honor were only a fable for children. And Amarasu, shipborne, the mother of my master and his brother, the heart of her great clan, was so composed of honor that she could only tell the truth, letting neither courtesy nor tradition silence her when she felt something must be said. Amarasu saw truth even when no one else could recognize it. So I felt then, and so I feel now. But how much can one of the long overlooked Tenukidaya excuse me. So I felt then, and so I feel now. But how much can one of the long overlooked Tenukidaya, a mere changeling, as some would call me, truly understand about his ageless masters? Before dawn the next morning, with the sky purple dark and the star called Night Heart still floating above the horizon, my master appeared at the stables with his friend Tariki. I was surprised to see Hakatri so early, but glad for him to find me already there, looking after Seafoam's hoof, which had healed with gratifying swiftness. "Have you seen my brother?" Hakatri asked me, and the way he said it immediately plunged my heart down into my belly. I hurried across the stable to the stall where Inaluki's horse, Bronze, was kept, and saw that it was empty. The bad feeling in my middle grew colder and heavier. "As I feared," said Hakatri when I told him, "he has left Azua. May the garden forgive him his foolish pride." "Perhaps he is just out riding," Tariki ventured. He was called Clearsight, and indeed he had eyes as sharp as a soaring hawk. But he also saw only the best in those around him, which is why he was one of my master's closest companions, while not his most trustworthy counselor. Inaluki often does that when he is unhappy with your parents. Taking his armor and his hunting spear, Hakatri shook his head. I spoke to the stable guards before I met you. He has gone and told no one of his plans. What do you think that sounds like? And I think I'm going to stop there. It's 2 o'clock, and it'd still be another 10 minutes or so till the end of this. And that's where I'm going to stop, I think. Yes. He has gone and told no one of his plans. What do you think that sounds like? Okay. And with that, I'm going to assume that we stayed on the air the whole time. It looks like it. Yes, everybody's saying thank you. So that means we were still here. So I have no idea what that was about or why it just suddenly shut off like that on Facebook, or told me that on Facebook. I will be reading again tomorrow, or tonight actually, at 7 p.m. my time here.
And then I'll be back next week. So I'm fully intending to go all the way through this book before anything else changes or happens. Not that I know anything specifically to be changing or happening. But so I'm going to wrap it up for the night. Thank you for joining me. A pleasure as always to share time with you. Take good care of yourselves, your friends, your loved ones, your near and dear, and anybody that also seems just to need some help, because it can be a tough life out there sometimes. And, those of us who've had things done for us owe it to the ones who did it to us or for us to pay that forward to somebody else. So anyway, commercial over. Again, thank you for joining me. I will see you, some of you, 7 p.m., and the rest of you I will maybe see this time next week. And until then, peace, be well, take care.